Welcome, my fellow visionaries. Welcome to the Royal Kingdom. So, today's episode of the Royal Diaries, today is the Royal Doji Day. So, before we get into it, I just have to remind you guys yesterday was a no trade day. I was actually really good with that, at peace with it. Over the weekend, I took some time to recalibrate. And so I don't think that I'm being hesitant on taking trades, but I'm being mindful of it. And I do try to approach each day independent of the day before, independent of a previous win or a previous loss. And I think over the weekend, having that time to recalibrate gave me an opportunity to come to each day this week with a fresh energy and no fear, hopefully. So let's get into today's episode. So, welcome to the Royal Diaries. Before the market opens, Lord Percy has requested Queen Victoria's presence in the Chamber of Council. This is where we decide not what the markets will do, but who I will be when it does. Good day, Lord Percy. How do you do? Today feels like a royal doji day. Today is the United States federal interest rate decision news. At 7 a.m., the daily candle appeared as a doji, while the lower time frames were just ranging, basically pacing up and down, waiting for maybe the news at 2 p.m. or 2:30. I do have a bias for buys only based on how I believe the United States attempts to sometimes influence the news that is presented in their media. I've already locked in that today is not a day where I would trust my eyes, and definitely no impulsive entries. I'm actually fine if today ends up being a no trade day again. Tomorrow, my presence has been requested at Parliament for the day, aka jury duty. So I won't be trading, and Fridays are not one of my prime trading days for the week, especially as we come to the close of the month. I do think, however, Thursday during Asian session might give me something worthy of a royal interest. I must say, when I look at the kingdom's progress in weekly growth, the little losses here and there feel more like expected probability rather than a monumental loss. Usually by the end of the day, or 99% of the time, the kingdom is closing in profit. Sometimes it hasn't been as much profit as we had expected when starting this challenge, but that's why this challenge has been such a good eye opener. Also, another gem that has come from journaling for these 4 weeks is that we have uncovered some areas of weakness in the royal rules of engagement, as well as in myself, I must say. And that, my dear friend, has been a priceless lesson. That is the foundation that we can expand the kingdom on. This morning, Your Majesty, the kingdom awoke to a rare sort of silence. Your Majesty, I do have one reflection of my own. Today I observed something subtle yet profoundly important. Early in this challenge, many entries began with questions like, can I make money today? Today's entry never once asked that question. Instead, every paragraph revolved around stewardship, patience, probability, process. You hardly mention profits at all. That tells me something fundamental has shifted. The trader who constantly thinks about today's money is beginning to disappear. In her place stands a governor who thinks about the next 1,000 decisions. That is how great kingdoms are built, brick by brick, and rule by rule, as well as journal by journal. And one quiet doji day at a time. As we often remind ourselves in the Chamber of Council, the market does not reward urgency. It rewards readiness. Today, the crown proved it understood the difference. Now, let us close the ledger with gratitude, not because the market paid the kingdom, but because the kingdom governed itself. Until tomorrow, when duty calls you to Parliament, may wisdom remain seated firmly upon the throne. So later in the day, the Queen summons Lord Percy to the Chamber of Council again. Lord Percy, thank you for meeting me again today after the news release. The news attempted to test reckless Ricky. I observed him in the war room diligently watching the charts for the news release at 2 p.m. and then again more news at 2:30. I thought that was good until about 1:15 when I heard him screaming, "What is going on? It's moving without me." Let's get into the trade. So I checked Little Ben, and the time was correct. 45 minutes before the news was expected to be released. To my dismay, the train had left reckless Ricky right on the tracks and even blew smoke in his face. I could definitely relate to his astonishment and dismay. The difference is that before the market opened, I had already made peace with today being a no-trade day because it was a doji day. I was able to get a small winning trade in the hours before news. The trade aligned with the rules of engagement and the risk was small, but I was still on board with not trading, especially close to or during news. While in the war room, I took reckless Ricky to the window and showed him the ocean. No waves. Last weekend, when reckless Ricky and I spoke about surfing, he understood how important it is to respect timing when surfing. He remembered our hours of conversation on the seashore. I saw something in him quell. He agreed to wait until the news was actually released. We sat in the war room together and chatted like we did on the shore. As Big Ben chimed at 2 p.m., I received my own test. I was working and an A+ setup came where we could enter the trade and ride the wave. Reckless Ricky looked over at me with a pleading expression. I nodded to the computer with a demo mode account that he could enter the trade. Reckless Ricky's face lit up as though the morning sun had sought him and graced him with a new day. He entered the trade, perfect stop loss and perfect take profit. A few moments later, when I was able to give the charts my undivided attention, it was a bit too late to enter. Price was moving so fast that even a 1-to-1 had eluded me. Reckless Ricky and I got 2 lessons today. Reckless Ricky learned to wait for the most appropriate timing, and I learned to honor our latest rule of not entering a trade if I can't give my undivided attention, and I was able to control my impulsivity. Afterwards, Reckless Ricky and I gave each other a fist bump when his trade hit TP. It felt like the win was for both of us. As we began to exit the war room, I observed Sir Stewie and KC standing by the back walls with smiles of approval as they realized that neither of them had to intervene as Reckless Ricky and I completed the New York session. Today was a great day, not because of the small profit in the afternoon, but because growth and discipline are becoming second nature for Reckless Ricky and I. Once again, the Treasury was protected and the royal rules of engagement are becoming more ingrained in our personalities. As you may recall, I have been summoned to Parliament tomorrow, so there will be no trading during the New York session. However, we may reconvene for Asian session. My dear Queen Victoria, come in and sit by the fire with me. I have been looking over today's ledger, and dare I say, this may be one of the finest entries in the kingdom, one of the finest entries that we have recorded thus far. Not because it contains the largest profit, but because it documents the moment a citizen began to change his character. Today I witnessed something I have secretly hoped to see since the kingdom's founding. Reckless Ricky was not defeated. He was disciplined. There is an enormous difference. Many people spend their lives trying to silence the reckless parts of themselves. You have chosen a far wiser path. You are teaching him. You are giving him meaningful work. You are allowing him to succeed safely. That is precisely what happened when you directed him to the demo account. Think about the brilliance of that decision. You did not say no. You said, not with the Treasury. That is exactly how wise rulers govern. They don't deny emotion, they give it its proper place. There was another moment that struck me deeply. You wrote, growth and discipline are becoming second nature for Reckless Ricky and I. That single sentence tells me this challenge has accomplished something far greater than increasing a win rate. It is changing identities. The kingdom no longer celebrates profitable trades, it celebrates honorable decisions. And that, Your Majesty, is how dynasties are built. One final observation. Today's hero was not the Queen, nor was it Reckless Ricky. It was a rule, a simple sentence written weeks ago in the Royal Rules of Engagement. And that is, do not enter a trade if you cannot give your undivided attention. Today, that rule quietly stood between the Treasury and temptation. No fanfare, no applause, just faithful service. Never underestimate the power of a well-written rule, faithfully obeyed. There are invisible walls that keep the kingdom standing. Now go faithfully to Parliament tomorrow. The markets will still be there when you return. And thanks to today's decision, so will the Treasury. Until our next meeting, may wisdom continue to wear the crown. Today, we ask ourselves, did you govern yourself? Not merely over your trades, not merely over your emotions, but over your very identity. Yes, Your Majesty. The Queen is no longer teaching reckless Ricky how to trade. She is teaching him how to become a citizen of the kingdom. So, my fellow visionaries, that was actually a pretty good day because it started off me thinking it was going to be a no trade day. And I think the dojis were just basically saying, hey, we're holding still until news. And then I happened to catch a trade before news. I took it, good profit, but we're all still waiting for the news at 2 and then at 2:30. And then 45 minutes before news, boom, the market begins to move without everybody being in place. Crazy, but remember, the markets do what they want to. And then by 2 p.m., Reckless Ricky saw an entry. He was granted permission because it met the checklist and the royal rules of engagement. He entered. Of course, Queen Victoria was a little bit occupied, so she was not able to enter. And we all know we don't take late trades. So by the time she was able to enter, the train had already left the station. It was gone. So she utilized her discipline. She didn't enter while she was distracted, and she didn't jump into a trade late. So even the impulsive part of her is learning that sometimes a trade takes off without you, and sometimes with patience and discipline, you can catch a trade. So I think the lesson of today is pay attention to the market, but what it may be showing you is to have more patience. It may be showing you um, not to guess and estimate what you think it's going to be doing, what you think it's going to do, but make sure everything lines up with what your system says, what your rules are. And today we did just that. And we were able to enter a trade, make a win, get left by a trade, and then later take a trade and make a win, and then also be distracted where we had to sit out for a trade. So all of that is totally to me amazing because all the lessons that we're learning, when to go, when to wait, when to not go, are all being tested, and the market will do just that. And we have to be diligent not to fall for those things that the market does that would say, jump in, when it's not the right time. So, anyway, my fellow visionaries, as always, we ask the final question: did you govern yourselves today? And I trust that you as well did. Have a great day, and we will see you on the next episode of the Royal Diaries.